So, David, your editorial on this particular occasion in A Messenger is about a theme that is passionate to you. It's on stewardship. Why did you choose this particular area? Why now stewardship?
Stewardship is simply about putting God first. God first in every area of our lives. Mm-hmm. The automatic trigger is the invitation to put God first with our finances, but it goes much wider than that.
Sure. So when we think about stewardship, we automatically, by default, think about returning tithes and in that particular way. But as you said, it's more about that.
Yeah.
We have different concepts today about returning of tithes. And I think one of the misconceptions that some people have is this understanding that I'm doing this as an obligation in expectation for something back in return.
The reason why I want to put God first in my life is because of what he's done for me. He acted first before I did. Mm. So I'm responding to his grace, to his goodness, to his love, to his mercy. And the response of the Christ follower is to say, yes, Lord, I will put you first in my life, including the return of a faithful tithe, which I believe is biblical.
Mm. Well, it is biblical, and we know that we return a faithful tithe as not because in response to what we may think that we need to do, but because of who God is and what he has done for us. It's a response of our loyalty and trust to God.
So it's about loyalty and trust. What it's not about is doing a deal with God. Mm-hmm. God, if I return my tithe, you will bless me, won't you? I will get the BMW. I will get the big house. Mm. I'll just return my tithe and everything's going to be all right. Mm-hmm. It's like a sort of the art of the deal. I call that the gospel according to Donald Trump, because that's the way he does it. His Christian faith is basically a prosperity gospel. I do a deal. Okay, God, you look after me, I'll look after you. I look after you, you look after me. And we're on our upward trajectory. God's not like that. How can you and I ever think that we can do a deal with God? All we can do is give him our worship, give him our life, put him first in our life. And so as I understand Malachi, God was livid with the priests in Malachi because they were distorting his sanctuary, they were distorting worship, and they were saying, we will be faithful to God our way. That's an oxymoron. How could you be faithful to God when you do it your way?
So talking about Malachi, obviously he was the one that says, as a man robbed God and so forth, and yet you've robbed me. So how, put that in context, he's making this appeal and he's challenging people. Will a man rob God? Of course we wouldn't have robbed God, but yet you have done so in your tithes and offerings. Where does the Malachi story come into that? And why does that appeal seems so strong even for today?
Malachi preached against a religious system that was dysfunctional. The priests in Malachi said, we've got a lamb. Christ said, give me the purest, best lamb you've got to sacrifice. The Malachi priest said, no. We'll do it our way. We can sell that lamb in the marketplace for 100 euros. We'll put on a shoddy old lamb, a lame lamb, a blind lamb. That's only get 20 euros in the marketplace. And that's what they did. How could they ever think that God would accept an imperfect lamb, which was supposed to represent him, the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world? Not a chance. And he was absolutely livid and mad, and he had this conversation through Malachi with them, and they didn't take him seriously. The lesson for you and me is, when I want to trust God, when I'm called to trust God, shouldn't I do it his way? Obedience, rather than my way, the Frank Sinatra gospel. I'll do it my way. Trusting God, putting God first, is being faithful to him, being obedient to him, and doing it his way. And when I return my tenth, his portion, I'm recognizing that he is in control of my life. We talked a week ago about Brexit and being in control of nations, right? God's not just in control of nation states. He invites us to let him take control of us too.
I think it's easier to say, trust God and, he will provide for you. But when somebody literally is in dire poverty, or the money that they get just is enough to make ends meet. Yep. And they have that relationship with God, and that makes them feel, well, God understands what I'm going through. God knows right now that I can't be returning a tithe right now because I need this for the next plate of food. Is there a place where God can oversee that and say, well, look, use your tithe to help you through the situation, and then when things get better, we can revisit this again?
It's not for me or the church to legislate what an individual does. But all I can invite them to do is to trust God. If you haven't got enough money for food, obviously, and you've got to feed your children, I'm not saying to you, return a tithe so you can't, and don't have enough money to feed the children. No way, you can't say that. That's not right. But even if you can't return a full tithe right now, take a step. Just little by little, grow in this experience. And when you've never returned a faithful tithe before, it's actually quite a dramatic step to go from returning 10%, full 10% of your salary when you've not been doing that before, with all the debts and all the budgets you've got. A step-by-step transition. That's what I suggest.
Sometimes, and I appreciate that point, sometimes as a church we do have that guilt kind of presentation that, if you don't return, something drastic will happen to you. But it's the other way that needs to be presented. It's not what if you don't return it, so-and-so, God will not bless you as richly. It's, as you mentioned before, it's recognizing that there's an honor and there's a privilege when we can return. And it's not because we're looking for something back in return. It's because of who God is and what he has provided for us and what he's done for us. It is truly in response to God's love for us.
Absolutely. Preachers, evangelists, teachers have a responsibility not to induce inappropriate guilt and become manipulative. And sometimes the stewardship story, especially when the moment you walk in the room, they think you're after the money. As stewardship people live with that label, and we just live with it and get on with it. But I don't want that ever to be perceived. The reality is, the reason why I return a tithe is only because of the grace of God in my life and that I've experienced. And so someone should only ever be compelled to return a faithful tithe, not because of what the preacher says, but because of their experience of the grace and love of God. The grace of God is the starting point of the stewardship story and nothing else.
Excellent. David, we'll leave it right there on that positive point. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.